Hello, this is Dreaded. In today's video topic, we're going to be talking about some random Last Epoch stuff. So, Path of Exile 2's release date, or at least the closed open beta thing, has been pushed to December 6th, which means I have an entire month to monkey around and just kill some time. So, we're probably going to be doing some Last Epoch related things. But because of this, I went and looked around Last Epoch stuff, and it turns out something happened. My build was spotlighted by an official EHE post. If you don't know, Terra Monthly, it's like this new thing that they've been doing where they've been posting every month. And one of the sections is talking about someone's build. And they decided to choose Smelter's Wrath World Splitter. So I have a lot of mixed emotions when it comes from this. While I really enjoyed this build, but I also really hated it for a lot of other reasons. So the main thing that I'm thinking about here is, well, first things off, I'm very humbled. It's nice to see some recognition, for my work and effort, considering I've been working on Smelter's Wrath for years now and trying to make it a competitive archetype. I think I've done 6 versions of Smelter's Wrath, if not more. I'm not entirely sure. And this is just my latest update on Smelter's Wrath as a build in general. But yeah, I've enjoyed the archetype, but something interesting I'm going to read over. By the way, this is not criticism at all for anything, but something that just caught my eye and it gave me an excuse to talk today. So we're just going to read this. It's that time again where we cast one of your builds in the spotlight of glory. This month we have something to warm up your gameplay after chilling out with the White Walker build last month. This month's spotlight goes to me. At least very spicy. I like how they do this graphic stuff. But the Smelter's Wrath World Splitter Forge Guard is a hard-hitting, Harbinger deleting tank doused in napalm. Now, if you have been long watchers of the channel, you can probably understand why I'm like a little kind of like, So to get everyone up to speed of why I'm a little when I read these lines, is this build here is what inspired this video. And this video, you can probably just read the title, but it's I played Forge Guard again, and I regret every minute of it. Well, that's because Forge Guard is not in a very good spot. Dread likes to play builds that aren't necessarily good, per se. He likes to play builds that are fun, because sometimes I've played all the meta stuff, I've done my fair share of meta garbage, but I wanted to mess around. So we decided to mess around with Smelter's Wrath, because we had a world splitter with a T7 melee fire off of a nemesis. You're like, screw it, why not? Wouldn't it be funny? And I leveled the Forge Guard, and it was I had a terrible time because I just hate Forge Guard right now, because melee right now in Last Epoch is in a very bad spot in general, just overall making this build just way worse than it needs to be. Now let's talk about that for a second a little bit more. So they said Harbinger deleting, so I pulled up the video here. Now, this is at your bitch basic corruption, around 700 corruption-ish. This is what I would call the bare minimum of gameplay. For a decent amount of favor per hour, as the community mandates for most of us, this is around where the favor per hour is good enough to merit your time and effort. And a lot of people have found this average to be about where favor grind isn't annoying, especially in Merchant's Guild. In COF, you want as much favor per hour as possible, but playing COF is a bad idea currently. So, or at least, for me anyways. So yeah, so we ignored COF around here for the most part. But I'm just going to play the clip here real quick. Just cause. So, I'm doing decent amounts, but if you were to compare it to almost anything right now, like the Bleed, Blast Rain build I played, there's like Falconers that exist, Warlocks that exist, Mages that exist, and I'm not even talking about the overpowered stuff. Like even like a Volcanic Orb build would have more single target than this. And that's just very sad, not because of the build itself, but because of the amount of effort that it took to get this build to this far, right? because like a T7 melee flat fire world splitter, that takes a while. A 2 LP max roll Titan Heart, that takes a while. Like a lot of my other gear takes a while. Increased health idols also takes a while. It's very expensive. This relic is almost like uncopyable. You just have to find a different relic that kind of functions in the same slot and then like move around some stuff. But you can literally not find this at all because like you'd have to get it off a Nemesis, which I got it from, which I bought it from trade to get it from. But all these things. So when I read like Harbinger deleting and I see this much damage, that's not really Harbinger deleting, at least in my opinion, and at least in most of the community's opinion right now. This is not the highest damage ever. So when I see that, I'm just like, grumble, grumble, grumble. And then the last part here, tank doused in napalm. So when they say tank, this is probably one of the squishier characters I've ever played. That is because it is a Sentinel. If you don't know, Sentinel has just gone through a very large amount of defensive nerfs, whether that be armor from sigils, HP nerfs, and like the DR nerfs on the tree. And there's even talks about Titan Heart getting nerfed, which is absolutely 100% mandatory for most two-handed Sentinel builds. Like, it's just, there's just a lot of problems that ForgeGuard has right now that this build is definitely not improving. So that's like another thing. Like, I would not call this build a tank. I would call the build that I played the other day, like, fuck. Like, if we were just to look here, I played like a random marksman for my cycle starter. This marksman was tankier, even though it was like, even though it had less HP, like it was tankier. You know why? Because you see how my character is over here and not here. That's called being a ranged character. So because of that, because of this distinction, I can push significantly farther than my ForgeGuard can, because when I'm here, I get hit by enemy, and when I'm here, I don't get hit by enemy. But when I'm playing a Smelter's Wrath build, I have to be essentially in things' faces. If we were to move to some gameplay here, for the most part, obviously, you know, we have a decent AoE, but for the most part, I do have to get decently close to the enemies, and thanks to the charge time, I do have to let them hit. So I would rate this build 20 billion times tankier than this build, just overall, because tankiness is relative. If I have less hit cap, like hits in general, like if I can't tank as many hits, but I just don't take as many hits, nowhere near as many hits because of my evasion and also as well just the playstyle, I mark it as way tankier than something that is forced to get into combat in the middle of things without that much benefits for doing so. Overall, like, look at that. Like, dude, like, just like, look at that. Just, oh my goodness. Okay, so what is he doing? So it's I think it's the Phoenix. Do you see that? I took 3,700 damage from a single, like, Phoenix. And just to give you an idea here, I have a Titan Heart on. I have armor scaling going on. I have like 4,000 plus HP. I'm running all stout HP idols. I'm not running a single damage idol. I'm running all stout HP idols, right? Like, all this and all that just to like get chunked by a random bird. Like, dude, this build is not tanky at all. But yeah. So other than that, like, they talk about more about the build and stuff like that. By the way, I just want to let you guys know, just because I have my negative things to talk about it, like, this is really cool. I'm really happy that this happened. But I really wanted to take this as a moment to talk about, hey, what's the devs' expectations of what a good build is versus what is the player's expectations? Because for me, personally, right now, as the content is being made, right, that right there is not good damage. That is mediocre damage. It is completely acceptable, like average, like run of the mill. But then you go and look at the amount of effort it took to get that damage, then all of a sudden it sours. Like, for instance, like, as a Sentinel, I should not need to run a Titan Heart and all stout idols just to be able to have a survivable amount of HP. I don't know why I can play a marksman And like marksman's one of the squishier masteries by just by hit damage. Like if you were to hit a marksman, like it's the squishiest. But how do I end up feeling way tinkier on a blast ring marksman? And like I'm playing a literal forge guard and I feel like a wet tissue. There's like a lot of problems in that regard, but still very, very cool for them to showcase the build though. I know I'm like shit talking a little bit about the build in general, like the Smelter's Wrath build, but that's just from balance perspective, like balance problems, right? Like, oh, like the build itself is cool. It's just, it has its problems, just like everything else in Last Epoch. But with all that being said, this has been Dread. Off to go do something else. Bye.